Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, one of the civic partners for this show. Today we are hosting a candidate conversation with Steve Putman, a candidate for District 9 of the St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators. Joining us in conversation is Liam Hunt, Professor Emeritus of History at St. Lawrence University and a member of the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County. Liam is also a resident of District 9. These nonpartisan conversations with candidates ask each candidate to explain his or her positions and ideas. We look forward to a thoughtful and civil discussion of the issues. A reminder to our audience that both candidates for District 9 were invited to appear on North Country Matters, and we'll film that second show a bit later in the month. Steve, welcome to North Country Matters. This is your second time here. You were here last fall with Liam, and District 9 includes the Village of Canton and a big part of the town. If you could show District 9 map on the screen for our voters, that would be great. You're an incumbent for the District 9 seat, and in running for your second full term, you served 8 years as a Village of Canton trustee, and you're the retired superintendent of schools of St. Lawrence Central and Brazier Falls. So you come to the position with a lot of experience in public service.
A lot of baggage, one might say.
A lot of baggage, yeah, there you go.
There you go.
So last fall, when you and Liam did your candidate conversation, you talked a lot about the actual mechanics of being a legislator and about how the board functions, and that was very good for just sort of an understanding of the job and what it is that legislators do. The board's working on the budget right now for 2015 and coming to the end of, as you come towards the end of this fiscal year, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the board and the county right now?
Well, really it hasn't changed much over the last few years. All levels of government since the market crash of 2008 have had trouble meeting the needs of their citizenry with the revenues available. And actually since that time, I think most people know that the state of New York had some serious budget issues. Several of the levels of reimbursement for services, well, first of all, let me back up a little. About 90% of the work that the county does is really on behalf of the state, whether that be home or state and federal government, whether that be the home heating assistance or whether it be the SNAP program for food or public assistance or a large
Medicaid.
list of, yes, all those kind of, Medicaid's is a big ticket item actually. So for a number of those programs, our reimbursement rate from the state has been reduced, which has obviously put us in serious financial constraints. The challenge will be once again to provide the services in as an effective and efficient manner as possible with as fiscally responsible budget as possible without overburdening the taxpayers. As you know, 2 years ago, the tax levy increased by over 14%, and then we were allowed by the state legislature to have home rule legislation, and the sales tax increased locally from 3% to 4%. And then last year, the current year's budget, the property tax was reduced by over 15%. So we're cognizant of what we hear from homeowners about how they're being strapped, particularly seniors. And so the budget is a big challenge. And quite frankly, I've always felt that if you want to know what people believe in, you should follow the money. You can say anything, but what you fund, and I mean, we have a lot of requirements, but beyond that, what you fund says what you value. So to me, that's part of the budget process.
Where you get the money also says what you value. Mm-hmm. And I think it's worth pointing out that both sales tax and to a considerable degree property tax are in fact regressive taxes. Sales tax, everybody knows, hit the people with the least most proportionally. But it's also true of property, because people have property, they've had it for years, their incomes are in fact going down often if they're seniors and the value of their property is allegedly going up, but they're not about to sell it unless they're moving into a nursing home. There are other ways to raise money. There are things called income taxes. Nobody likes to talk about new taxes, but some areas, some municipalities, New York City, for example, have an income tax. Would that not be a much fairer way of meeting our fiscal needs?
It would, but
Particularly because that would be adjusted according to your income going up or down. So,
you know, and to be honest, I'm not sure. So I'll throw that caveat first, but I'm not sure that we're allowed at the county level to
not covered
assess
by home rule?
income. No, well, I'm sure that's true, but even if it were, I'm not sure that it's allowed. New York City oftentimes is treated differently. But I think actually Yonkers has an income tax too.
It does.
So sometimes the state legislature, you know, passes laws or makes rules for certain municipalities and not others. It's an interesting question that I don't know the answer to. But first, let me back up. I agree with you about the regressiveness of that. And unfortunately, I mean, okay, I'm running for District 9 County Legislature. Right. And so I'm sure you don't want to spend a lot of time talking about federal policy and so forth, but you know, I mean, the taxation policies of the federal government and what I perceive as the inequities and the concentration of wealth, you know, in the hands of so few in this country, I don't think it's good for the economy. I don't think it's good for taxation. And if you look historically over the last 50 years, a lot of the funds that flow down to states and then from there to localities have been reduced. So I don't disagree with anything you just said about the regressiveness, but I think that our choices are somewhere between 0 and none. If I could back up one thing too, I want to make one point for your listeners out there, and that is that this is the first election since the 2010 redistricting, and I know you had a picture of the district up there earlier. The people that live in the Village of Canton, none of that has changed. That was in District 9. The section that's outside in the town has changed slightly from what's known as the old DeKalb Road over to Rensselaer Falls and out to Route 68. Used to be in District 9, it no longer is. It's now actually in District 3. And then there's some section from the old DeKalb Road over to Route 11 toward DeKalb and Governor. Used to be in District 9, it still is. But then the district now continues further to the east. I mean, the land in Town of Canton is all south of the village, to the Minor Street Road. So people that live on the Minor Street Road and some of the side roads like the Lady Pirates Road and the Jingleville Road are now in District 9. So I thought that would be good for your listeners that might live in those areas to realize.
Right. Having brought that up, redistricting also, of course, applies to, rather dramatically, to the state legislature. And it would seems to many of us that the results for St. Lawrence County have been a disaster. I mean, we've been sliced and diced, so there is no legislator who is primarily concerned with St. Lawrence University. And a lot of things are simply done at the county level. I mean, things are budgeted at the county level. We no longer have even two legislators who are primarily concerned with our county, and it makes it really very difficult, it would seem to me, for the county to relate to Albany. However, we do have a county legislature, and it seems to me that the county legislature could do more than it has historically done to serve as a kind of forum, a kind of tribune, advocate for the interests of the county. You mentioned that a lot of decisions are made at the federal level, and of course you don't have direct input. But county elected officials, county legislators, do have a voice. Resolutions passed by a county legislature would have rather more salience than a letter from an ordinary constituent might. So I wondered if you have any plans to try to make the legislature a more effective kind of collective representative, since we don't really have one in the state legislature at the present.
Well, to be honest, we at the county level pass more resolutions of that nature than people might realize. It's not.
Well, why don't people realize it? There again, there's a problem of communication between the electorate and the institutions.
You may well have a point. I think to some degree we rely, possibly too much, on the newspapers and so forth. And don't get me wrong, the reporters, I have good relationships with them, but they write stories or whatever, and then the editors, decide what actually
Some
goes in
things
and writes
just
the
don't
headline.
seem to
They're
make
they're
the
not
cut. Yeah.
they're not
Right.
sexy, or they're not
No.
exciting, or they're
But
not
you-
They don't have
controversial.
money or
Yeah.
whatever.
But you can hold press conferences. I mean, you could get on NPR, certainly, NCPR.
Good point. Good suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I haven't thought that much about that part of it, and maybe
No,
haven't,
you might
and
do
maybe
so.
haven't thought enough about that. To be honest.
I want to go back for just a second, if we can, please, Steve. You talked earlier about the fact that about 90% of what the county does is actually the work of the federal or the state government through mandates.
Right.
And they're requiring you to do it, and that the reimbursement rate is going down. How has that relationship changed in the last, like say, 4 years since you've been on the board, in terms of, if we're mandated at this level and we're reimbursed at that level, then we're in balance, but we're not in balance anymore?
Yeah, that's made it very challenging. A perfect example is one of the public services that the county used to do was home health care, and the reimbursements in that area were reduced. And the county no longer does home health care. We were able to encourage a consortium of Canton Potsdam Hospital and Hepburn Hospital and United Helpers. And,
Is this the North Star?
yeah, I'm trying to
Alliance or
yes,
Yeah. Right.
and also hospice, I believe, is the fourth partner in that group, to get licensed and go into that endeavor. So that was not, to be honest, a decision on my part, at least, that came easily. And for a variety of reasons, I felt that the county employees actually did an outstanding job in that area. And also, it's for me personally, it's a challenge because I feel as though we have a lot of responsibilities, but I think one of our responsibilities is to our employees. And if you have employees that have been with you for 20 plus years, and people make decisions about their jobs and careers for a lot of different reasons. And historically, people have gone into working in the public sector, many times trade off salary for long-term benefits, the retirement, and those kind of things.
For the same reason.
Exactly. So when you suddenly have employees that have been with you for 20 or 30 years and you stop doing that service,
You've let down your end of
that's,
the bargain.
I feel like,
You've
you've broken
broken
that
faith.
covenant
Yeah.
with your employees. Now, having said that, in truth, a lot of them were able to switch to some other job in the Department of Health, but I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. A lot of people ended up, losing their jobs. Some of them, I think even many, were able to get jobs in the same area with the private sector. But suddenly, if, it's, like I said, I don't take it lightly when somebody's in their mid-40s and they've been in the public sector employment and have years built up in a retirement system to suddenly have to go to the private sector. And then, at retirement, they end up with two not very well-funded retirements, that
Because
they
they
have to
didn't have
somehow
enough time
manage
in
together,
either, right.
Yeah. So it's, but that's one of the things that happens. Now, in the 4 years I've been in the legislature, when I ran 4 years ago, there were over 900 employees at the county, and we now have over 750. The example I gave you is, I would say, the toughest one. Most of the rest of those reductions in employees came through attrition. The vast majority came through, retirements and not replacing and trying to realign jobs and all those kind of things. So I feel as though our employees are working harder, working more efficiently, all those kind of things that you ask employees to do. And to be honest, I get off topic here a little bit.
No, actually, that's not a
our labor units have all taken 0% raises at different times. I mean, you can't do that indefinitely. So, when you're talking about budget, we're really approaching times where we're between a rock and a hard place. Another thing that really, to be honest, it really gets under my skin, when people at the state level talk about property taxes in New York, okay? New York is one of, I believe, 5, small number, don't quote me, hold me to the number 5, of states in the United States that pushes Medicaid costs down to the county.
That's right.
The other states don't do that. So you know, so you're pushing, in St. Lawrence County's case, $24 million of cost down to a level where our sources of revenue are sales tax and property tax, to your earlier point, as opposed to a larger, whenever you move costs from a larger taxing entity to a smaller taxing entity, you're getting regressive. And think about St. Lawrence County, as we all know. I mean, first of all, I've grown up here. I love living here. And I think there's a lot of wonderful things about living here, but we have one of the highest rates of poverty. We battle with the Bronx for unemployment levels. We have all these issues. You know, we have an outflow of our young talented, you know, children, and yet, so imagine what our Medicaid costs are relative to our wealth and our capacity to tax. You know, and then somebody wonders why we have trouble keeping up with our rebuilding of roads and bridges.
Exactly.
Right.
It's
Well, the same problem arises with local control of the educational system, too. It's financed by local property taxes. Typically, the least advantaged areas have the least advantaged schools and consequences. I mean, I don't have to tell
you might not want to get me started on that topic. We might not ever be able to end this conversation because that's near and dear to my heart. And
you know that firsthand and very, very personally.
There have, too personally sometimes. There have been studies done. Rutgers University, in conjunction with the Education Law Center, has done national studies, and our governor has been quoted as saying we spend more money on education than any state in the union. I think we may not be top now, but we're in the top few. That's true, but when private business does business on Long Island and in New York City and in the Lower Hudson, their costs are higher than most areas too, so that's not unusual. Somehow, the other main point of that study, I've never heard him quote, which is that New York ranks in the bottom 5 or 6 in terms of equity of funding. Right. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Yeah. And so it's those are all the challenges that we face, whether it be our school districts or whether it be county government, in terms of trying to make our revenues match our obligations and our expenses. And there's a lot of tough choices, you know, that have been made and have to be made.
And in a not very flexible system because of the mandates and because of the way, you know, a perfect example is Potsdam and Canton are looking at merging their school districts. Right. And the reason is overwhelmingly caused by the state funding of education and how that formula isn't working for some districts. And so, you know, so I can appreciate the position that you're in at the county level. You mentioned about 150 people have been cut from the rolls of the employees in the last 8 years or 4 years. Okay, so we know that, just talking about infrastructure, we know that a lot of that is very demanding physical work: repairing roads, plowing roads, taking care of bridges. There comes a point of diminishing returns. You just can't get rid of people and still have that hard, important physical infrastructure work done. Are we at the point where we don't have enough people, or doesn't matter because we don't have enough of the other resources to do that work? Infrastructure is a big problem.
Probably both to a degree, but I think we are at a point, and if you actually look at the number of employees a year ago and maybe even 2 years ago, they haven't changed much. We're at a place where it's very difficult to eliminate positions. We saw the first couple of years of my time on the county legislature of these past 4 years, where we'd see a lot of positions eliminated, or positions combined, or positions being reclassified when one person retired and 2 people changing roles to get the work done. But in the last year or 2, you just haven't seen much of that because, you know, I think we're at a point where it's very difficult. I'm not going to say impossible because always and never are pretty bad terms to use, but to eliminate more positions. So, you know, the further down that road you go, the tougher it becomes to match your revenues and expenses and to have the kind of county government that you want, and to be able to build infrastructure, and to be able to have, one of the issues that's been in the press a lot is an adequate fund balance. I mean, that's certainly a question that not everybody would agree on what's adequate, but anyway.
Well, you've obviously got some very difficult problems to grapple with.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed you say a politician shouldn't say never. You were quoting Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan was quoting Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So you're covered on
Let's
that.
just say I was quoting Franklin Delano Roosevelt. How's that?
All right. But you're in a tough situation. I mean, I won't say you're trying to square the circle, but it's nothing approaching that. So in a situation like that, it's particularly important to have a harmonious, consensual team working together on the problem. That's not, I think, exactly the state of the county legislature. A couple of legislators, in fact, have recently decided not to run again. On the grounds that they're quoted as saying that the grounds that the atmosphere in the legislature is one of deadlock, and it's just extremely frustrating. Do you think that's a fair perception? If so, what do you hope to do about it?
To be honest, I think that is probably a slight exaggeration. I think that on certain issues, people get very emotional, shall we say. And also, I'd say in the last 3 or 4 months, it's an election year, all the county legislators are for re-election. You've had certain people making partisan, declarations, even rants, I might suggest occasionally. So there's also been a lot of issues where I think people looked at it from a problem-solving perspective and were able to come to good solutions. I mean, one of the examples, too, that didn't really, where we had a good outcome that didn't really hurt public employees, was the transportation issue. I think everybody remembers the START buses and the routes we had around the county, and our perfect example of where our reimbursements were cut, and so we were left with a lot of tough choices. And out of that came, and to be quite frank, I don't take any credit for this, it was the ARC that has buses running all over the county. They kind of stepped forward, and we were able to work out an arrangement where there's actually more opportunities for people to get public transportation. And
ARC, you were talking before the show about how you didn't like people throwing in acronyms and not explaining
I'm
them.
sorry.
In
Thank
case
you.
they're the odd viewer who doesn't know.
And that's a long one. It's SLCARC. It's the
Exactly.
St. Lawrence County
Association
So
of Retarded Citizens?
Rehabilitation. Anyway, it is certainly a not-for-profit organization that works with people with disabilities, and they do. A lot of people may know it as a place where they have brought their nickel deposit returns. They do a lot of that work. They do a lot of other jobs. We actually did some work with them when I was superintendent. In terms of document shredding and those kind of things. Actually, I saw a presentation just recently from someone from the state level about different county organizations that do different activities. And it's amazing the list of things that they do, and they obviously, for people with certain developmental disabilities, have challenges finding work, in the public or private sector. It's a tremendous program, and a lot of those people obviously need transportation too. So these two things have blended together nicely. But and that was one where we really didn't have to cost any jobs, and
So
the outcome was
transportation available to the general public as well as to their immediate
for a small
constituency.
charge.
So what you're really talking about here is practical problem solving. That is putting together the pieces that are already in the community. So on that theme, in our last couple of minutes here, Steve, are there untapped resources in this county that you think we need to be doing more of that kind of work with? And, can you give us an example or two of?
Well, to be honest, because I hadn't thought about it before I got here, none come particularly to mind. But I'll give you another example that happened just recently within the last year, and that's with the solid waste authority. There's a number of my colleagues in the legislature that I think, based on their actions, would have liked us to get out of the solid waste business. And quite frankly, my concern is not so much even for the people in my district, because, you know, in the Canton, Potsdam area, but, you know, this is a large county, and you take the very rural areas and out toward the Adirondacks, I question what kind of service those people would have had. And a lot of people take their own garbage and recyclables to recycling centers because they don't have the money to pay even the $33 a month to Casella or somebody else. So I think that would have been a real great loss. But by actually partnering with the largest haulers, and they agreed to bring a certain amount of their refuse to our transfer stations instead of trucking it to Rodman themselves, we were actually able to lower the per tonnage cost. And to me, it's a perfect example of a good private-public partnership. Will there be other areas of that possibility, particularly in the areas of health and, you know, mental health and drug counseling? I don't know. I mean, there certainly would be worth entertaining. We do a lot of partnerships, more than people realize now, with the towns and villages in the highway and bridge business, because a lot of times we have the equipment, we have the engineers, we do a lot of engineering for the towns. So I mean, there's areas there that's public, but still it's a partnership. Yes. Yeah. I don't really, to be honest, have any ideas that come to mind, but also I also feel that as a legislator or as a legislature, it's our job to suggest to our department heads and our county administrator, and that's one of the biggest jobs the next legislature is going to have, is hiring a new county administrator. As you know, our county administrator retires March 31st. That's a very important decision. I used to tell my school board members that the most important decision they made was who they hired as the school superintendent. In many ways, it's similar. So I think one of our jobs is to say to them, because they work in each of their, you know, fields more directly than we do, bring to us ideas about, you know, public-private partnerships that may be a benefit to the residents and to your clients and all those kind of things, because they're just closer to it, you know, in many ways than we are. So,
what about coordination?
Liam, our time is up. I hate to say it because it's been such a fascinating conversation. I want to remind our audience that Election Day is November 4th, and that you need to be sure you're registered to vote, and to take the time that you need to find out who's running in all of the races that you'll actually be having an effect on with your vote, and to find out where the candidates stand on the issues that you care about. So thank you, gentlemen. These conversations are a production of North Country Matters, which is produced here in the studios of St. Lawrence County, of Clarkson University. And it's a civic collaboration between the American Association of University Women and the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County and the Media and Communications Department here at Clarkson University. Until next time, please remember, our North Country matters.